Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So good to have you with us as we do our study in the book of Titus. This is actually part two of Mother's Day series, and this is for May 19th, 2024, but you can listen to it anytime that you want. And just by way of review, we had looked at Titus chapter 2 and verse 2, and it said, Older women likewise are to be reverent in their behavior, not malicious gossips, nor enslaved to much wine, teaching what is good, so that they may encourage the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be sensible, pure workers at home, kind, being subject to their own husbands, so that the word of God will not be dishonored. Well, the mature women, by way of review, have a very important ministry, and their reverent behavior and their teaching things that are good, and encouraging the younger women to love their husbands and children. This is a very important ministry. It means that God sees things this way. That encouraging the family, encouraging young women to be family oriented, love their husbands and love their children, to be industrious. These things are very important to God and should therefore be important to godly women. The problem is we don't seem to see that in society, and they're giving us feedback that they don't like our message. You know what we have to say about that? Too bad. Too bad for them. This is how God sees it. He created the family. He started the family before there were any governments. And the family is the basic unit of society. And the church and the governments that encourage the family and strengthen it, strengthen themselves. And my friends, even the church is called the family of God. And the family of God encourages families, strengthens them. And we don't let the world tell us what they think. In fact, we insulate ourselves from the world, and then we give them an alternative to the failure of what they're doing. And we preach the word. And ladies in our church need to see things how God sees them and see that this is an important ministry and not surrender it or bring the world's thinking into the church. So, our Lord Jesus Christ was put into a family of a humble mother and wife and husband and father, and they were industrious and godly, and that was good enough for God. Now, my friends, that is His stamp of approval on the family and how He set it up. Now, young wives and mothers need to properly love their husbands and children. On Father's Day, I'll probably say something like, young men need to love their wives and their children too. But nevertheless, these were the review of the last message. Then we come to Titus chapter 2 and verse 5, and I would like to expand this more than I did the previous week. You know, you can only say so much. Last week was a 40-minute message, and I couldn't get into the detail here. And it says to be sensible, pure, workers at home, kind, being subject to their own husbands. The world doesn't like this message, but we're going to preach it anyway because we're preaching to the church, and this is God's message. The mature ladies need to teach the younger ladies to be sensible. Sensible. This has to do with the art of living, as far as I can see. The art of living has to do with how to stretch a dollar. Uh, Not only that, but to learn to be content. You know, people see on TV, you need this or you're not complete. Oh, look at this magazine, and these people are so happy because they brushed their teeth with Pepsodent. And, it always telling you that this is what's going to make you happy. And so the art of living so many times is just learning to be content with what you have. If you can't change your circumstances, change your attitude toward those circumstances. And so being content, and not only being content, but making do with what you have, which is similar, repairing rather than throwing out, making things last, uh, couponing, finding things on sale. We have three daughters, and we pride ourselves in buying things cheaper than the retail. And with children going through shoes and clothes so fast because they're growing, garage sailing and getting the various different clothes that people turn over because their kids can't wear them anymore, and there's nothing wrong with them, and getting them at bargain prices, garage sailing. I know people that are millionaires, and they like to go to garage sales to pick up the bargains. Once it gets into you and it's a way of living, it just seems scandalous to pay tremendous amount of money for something you can get at a bargain rate. And that might be why they're millionaires, by the way. Also, um, using scraps of time to do side hustles. I know people, maybe it's not something I would want to do, but they have a good car and they have little scraps of time and they drive for Uber or they deliver uh, meals to people and they tip them and all kinds of stuff. It's just wonderful. They use scraps of time, and maybe what they use the money for is to go get a nice vacation. Well, that's fine if that's what they want to do. And they do this side hustle. I know people that go donate plasma so they can have money for a nicer vacation. Well, it's up to them. They can do that. But this has to do with the art of living and having reasonable expectations. Um, you know, it's hard for me to want to buy a brand name cereal when the store brand was made by the same company, just with the store's name on it. So I buy that. Saves me $1 on a box. And so these little decisions that people make of reasonable expectations, sometimes the high end stuff with the bells and the whistles, that's just more stuff to break down. And you get yourself 80 to 90% of the value, and it doesn't cost you that extra margin of $1,000, then go for that. Go for that 90%. It's cheaper. Reasonable expectations. So this is very important. The mature ladies need to teach the younger ladies to be sensible. Young ladies need to understand that what their parents worked all their life to get, and that they observe now that their parents have, isn't where she can start. She has to start in a starter home or renting and build up an income to put it on a down payment, and she just can't have everything top of the line like her parents seem to have now. And so they have to have reasonable expectations. This is true also for the young men. The mature ladies need to teach the younger to be pure. It says here to be sensible, pure. That's the Greek word agnos. And if that sounds like the name Agnes, that's no coincidence. It means to be pure or holy. And so some people would name their daughters Agnes because they have that quality of purity they want to have live in their daughters. So it makes a good women's name. Our young women are not to be like the women of the world. Stars, movie stars, the styles, the films, the music, the magazine, they model mostly cheap behavior. And they try to stampede our young ladies into wanting certain styles. And they're very, very vulnerable to that. I don't know why they are, but they are. And a certain element of the young men are as well. How they comb their hair, how they wear their hair. And it seems like the style right now is to have ripped jeans. And so they wear that. Someday they're going to not even wear those anymore. They're going to wear something different. But you don't want to look at the world and copy the world, the cheap way that they dress. See Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians 5. Well, I need to find it myself here. Ephesians 5 and verse 3. But immorality or any impurity or greed must not even be named among you, as is proper among the saints, not just women, but men too. And there must be no filthiness and silly talk or coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather giving of thanks. So this is a standard in Christianity, that you're not foul-mouthed, and that you're pure. And this is a problem. The world tries to compress our daughters and our sons into a very rank sexuality. The idea of saving yourself for marriage and being pure is laughed at, is even considered pinched. I think that it's godly. And so it's very important for us as Christians to not even have impurity named among us. It is an embarrassment. Now, 1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 2, it's giving instructions to Timothy. I'll start with verse 1. Do not sharply rebuke an older man, Timothy, but rather appeal to him as a father, to the younger men as brothers, the older women as mothers, and the younger women as sisters, in all purity. And so it's very important for you, Timothy. Timothy was a single man, and he was supposed to be very careful how he interacted with the opposite sex, and was always wanting to be very pure. I just want you to know your pastor bends over backwards to make sure that there's nothing untoward. I followed a man in my previous church who had disqualified himself because of adultery, pastor, and I've seen the damage that it can do to a church. It's very important for us to have purity in our pastors, in our people, our wives, our ladies, and so it's something to be held up. Also in 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 2, the reason why I'm kind of emphasizing this is because it's so needful in the church. 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 2, it talks about, as they observe your chaste and respectful behavior Your adornment must not be merely external, braiding the hair and wearing gold jewelry or putting on dress, but let it be the hidden person of the heart with imperishable quality of gentle and quiet spirit, which is precious in the sight of God. Doesn't mean you can't be an extrovert, but what it means is that there are qualities that are very, very lovely and attractive and valuable in the sight of God. And so don't forget, though, older ladies, that we have young ladies or even older ladies that are being saved along the way, and they need to be helped over some of the imprint that the world had upon their lives. I had an acquaintance in the first church that I came into membership in our fellowship there at Worthington Grace Brethren Church. And she was, I would say, a very godly woman. But she was kind of telling a story about herself, and she said that she had gotten saved, and they were having a party among the church, and they were to bring a dessert, a board game, and so she and her husband went to this, and having newly been saved, she didn't have the accoutrements of godliness, I suppose, on her life. She just came out of the world, and she had a low-cut red dress that showed her figure closely fitted onto her body. She brought rum balls for dessert, and her board game was a Ouija board. And she laughed about this when she told it. And she says, I've learned to be more modest in my dress, a little more careful about the use of alcohol, and then I certainly got rid of my Ouija board because of its occult um, relationship. So we have ladies that are learning, and we are patient, and we're working with them as well. Not only should they teach the women to be sensible, and the older women should teach the younger women how to be pure, but teaching the younger ladies to be industrious and workers. So it says here in Titus these words. It says, workers at home. Now remember the culture that they had. If you look back at verse 12 of chapter 1, one of themselves, a prophet of their own, said, Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons. And so there was a laziness and a careless way in which they lived. And this was something that was true among the women as well as the men. It was their culture. It was just very lazy and wasn't industrious. And so when he says, I would that you be workers at home, it's a compound word. It's the word oikos, which means house, our home, and ergon, which means work. We get our word erg from it, which means to have effort. And, you know, when it said workers at home, I'm going to emphasize this. Some people look at that and they say, workers at home, meaning that at home they are industrious. They're not just sitting around, they're working. But others look at that and they say, workers at home, meaning they have to stay in the home. They can't have a job outside the home. And what I think the Apostle Paul was trying to indicate is that the women need to be industrious. They need to be users of their time and not in a lazy or idle way. And whatever he said, it was informed by Proverbs 31. And let's look at that for a second. Now, Paul knew Proverbs 31, and when he said that they should be workers at home, he knew this passage. And it says here in verse 10, an excellent wife who can find? For her worth is far above jewels. She's very valuable. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She is thrifty. She is industrious. She's trustworthy. She uses her time well. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. And I'm sure that he does her well all the days of his life. You have two people that marry together and work together, you really got something. And it says here, she looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. She likes to do things. She does things for the home. She does things for her family. And so she's using her hands. She is like merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. Well, that doesn't sound like she is all caught up in just the house and can't go out. It looks like she's involved with finding materials that she wants to use, and she combines them and puts some value to it by her effort. She's like a merchant ship. She's very industrious. She rises also while it is still night. It's up early in the morning and gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. She takes care of the people that she watches over. She considers a field and buys it. Here she's kind of like an industrious person, and she is purchasing fields. She has control of her own money. From her earnings, she plants a vineyard. So she handles money, and she buys a vineyard or a field, and then she plants a vineyard and gets more value out of it. And so she's helping. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. She's a hard-working lady. She has a side hustle. She drives for Uber. She works at the bank. Today, our ladies, they have so many time savers, and because of that, they have extra time. They don't have to have a wash day that took all day on Monday, and the meals can get prepared a lot faster, and all the things that they have to do, they can do quicker. Praise the Lord. And so many industrious women, they have work outside the home, and they can handle it. I think that's fantastic. She senses that her gain is good. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands grasp the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor. She has extra, and she can help people that are needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household. That means she looks ahead. She considers what might be coming. She learns from perhaps mistakes in the past. And not only does she make sure that the family has what they need, a coat in the winter time or something. I never worried about when I was a kid whether I had something to wear. My mom was the one that worried about that. She said, we need to have you go get a new coat. I needed a new coat. I was going to make do, but we would go out and get a coat. Then to my horror, I had to go and get a tie and put it around my neck, and she wanted me to dress nice. But anyhow, my mother took care of all my needs. Her husband is known in the gates. Why? because of how she supports him, how she helps him, and he advances as well. And strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth in wisdom. She's just not some workaholic. She's wise. She's a woman that knows what the scriptures say, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and bless her, her husband also, and praises her, saying, Many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the product of her hands, and let the works praise her in the gates. Now, whatever that says about an industrious woman in her time, and all she does, and she does it for the home, but she works outside as well, and she's involved in society, and she's a wise one, she's a sharp cookie, and she really helps her husband. All of that you should put into that word, workers at home. Now, my friends, if you think that Paul is saying women should be workers at home, staying in the home, not be seen, not work outside the home at all, not be industrious, just raise children and be subservient to their husband, you don't really understand what the Bible teaches about godly women. And so they can be quite industrious. And the cultural context was speaking about not being idle, which was the island of Crete. Also, there is another passage that ought to be looked at, and that's in 1 Timothy chapter 5. And in 1 Timothy chapter 5, it has this comment, Therefore I want younger widows to get married, bear children, keep house. Now that word keep house, in our culture, we think keep house means that you cook, you clean, that's all you do, you stay at home. But what it really is talking about here, when you have those two words put together, it's once again a compound word or two words put together, oikos despotein. Oikos, once again, means home, and despotein means overseer. We get our word despot, but that's not quite how you should look at that, as she's the despot of the house. No, she's an overseer of the house, and she overlooks everything and keeps control of things. So teach them to have primary responsibility of the home. They can work outside, they can buy a field, they can work a vineyard, they can go and find industrial things and put them together, and she can make belts for the merchants. Those are just examples. That doesn't mean that that's all that they can do. They can do anything. They can drive for Uber. They can be a real estate agent on the side or whatever. But the main thing is that they want to bless their home. And I want you to know the main thing for a man is that he wants to bless his home. He wants to take care of it. If a woman wants to sacrifice her family and her children for her career, I'm against it. And if a man wants to sacrifice his home and his family for his career, I'm against that too. A plague on both their houses. A man and a woman should be concerned about their home and their children. And if they don't have children, they should try and find other people's children and be involved in the church and help and build up their home. There's a reason why God doesn't let them have children. Maybe it's so that they can be a blessing. I know a man and a woman who didn't have children. We called them Dr. Bob and Aunt Polly. He was a dentist. And they ran the youth group at the Methodist Church, and it was a great benefit to me. And I thank the God for them and their willingness but they were aunts and uncles, so to speak, to myriad of children, even though they had none for themselves. And so, my friends, be a blessing to your home. And then it says here that the older women are to teach the younger women to be kind. To be kind. I tried to figure out a way to explain this. Kindness is to a marriage as oil is to a squeaking door. And, if you have a squeaking door, and it bothers you, and finally somebody says, we need a little oil on that hinge. And so you put a little oil in that hinge, and so now when the door comes open and closed, it not that aggravating thing, it just makes life more pleasant. And that's what kindness is. The pat on the head when the child goes out the door, the kiss on the arm when there's a bruise, um, the rubbing and massaging of your husband's back when he's sore, um, the kind love note in the lunch box, uh, making somebody their favorite meal, uh, just all these things that can be done that just make life better. And not only should women be kind, men should be too also kind. And so kindness is the oil on the squeaking hinge, and it just makes things so much better. Teach them to be helpmates and teammates. It says here, uh, being subject to their own husbands. Well, let me tell you something about that word that's translated being subject to their own husbands. It is the word hupotasamenos. And hupo means under, and tasso is a military word of rank, ranking under your husbands. And that is in the middle voice, meaning you choose to rank under your husbands. So, ranking yourself under. And what that means is that you are doing this for the sake of the family. Just as in the military, there are generals, and then there's sergeants, and then there's privates, and privates rank under the sergeants and the generals and all that sort of stuff. And they do things to make cooperation. So that works, and it has to be that way. We have teams. We're not in March Madness anymore, but we're in the playoffs for the NBA right now. And they work as a team, and the team that works the best together is usually the team that wins. And maybe they have a dominant player, but then he has to have other people who work in around him. There has to be somebody that brings up the ball. There has to be somebody that's good at passing. There's somebody has to be good at rebounding. Somebody is good at defense. And so you work together and you rank under the team in your role that you play. And my friends, God has set up the family as a team. And by his sovereign choice, he says that the man is the head of the household. So the woman that's in that household ranks under that, but that is not meant to be a demeaning of her. As a matter of fact, if you see it as a team and that you choose to rank under your husband for the benefit of that, you work together with your husband. And every family has its own mix. Sometimes the brains of the outfit are with the wife. Sometimes the husband is the talker. Sometimes more the wife is the talker. Sometimes they make their decisions more jointly. They work together as a team. If the wife likes to change the oil on the car, let her. If the husband likes to cook, let him. Every family has its mix. Some are more traditional, some are less traditional. We don't have to get real judgy about all this stuff, but they work as a team and they get it done. So that's what the home life is about, and the wife is uh, a very good role player. Now, I have here one last comment. What's the hardest job in the orchestra? Uh, is it, going from all those drums and the marimbas and all these things and learning to count, or is it a complicated instrument that you blow into with the double reeds and all that sort of thing, or is it the trombone with all of its different systems of where the notes are, and is it the fiddle, the first chair of the violinist? I have heard that the hardest instrument in the orchestra, and this is a loaded statement, is second fiddle. And the reason why is because you don't get the glory, but it's a difficult position to play, and it takes a lot of skill and humbleness to do it. God has asked the women to play second fiddle on the team to help it for its best benefit. And thank you, ladies, for what you do. It doesn't go unnoticed. And this is how God has set things up. It's not meant to demean you. Even the Lord Jesus Christ ranked under the Father to do the things he had to do, even to the death of the cross, so that we all might be benefited. Thank you for what you do, ladies. It's important.